From low-level bandit kings to the demon lords of the abyss, villains come in all shapes and sizes and are necessary for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign to happen. You gotta have an antagonist. I've been reading a lot of old dragon magazines, and one of them had a D20 table of a bunch of different villains from Dungeons & Dragons that you could potentially use or just to like talk about in the magazine. It was a good read, and it got me thinking, what is potentially my favorite villain? Because I really like villains. As a dungeon master, I think they're the most fun to come up with. So here are my top 10 iconic D&D villains. But first, we're going to talk about Describe. Describe, ladies and gentlemen, describe.com is a place to get really awesome text for your tabletop role-playing game. This is a really cool tool. You can search for just about anything, like, I don't know, Acid Pit. And we will come up with a whole bunch of various things that we can use. Here we have some text for Acid Splash, Pit Spitting, Bottomless Pit, Mud Giants Pit with caves, an oasis camp. I mean, lots of really interesting, cool things. And you click one of these and you go into it, and it has this wonderful text that you can use. This was written by Mr. Matt Cernett. They have a bunch of free stuff, so don't feel like you have to pay. But if you want to do a subscription, it unlocks a lot. And if you're a dungeon master and you're looking for quality flavor text like this, it is 100% worth it. So again, that's describe.com/Jordan with a PH. They won an Emmy in 2021, and that's cool. Check them out. All right, number 10 is Kius. Now, Kius is from the, or Kius? I think it's Kius. I always forget. But Kius is the worm that walks. It is from the Greyhawk setting and is known as the worm that walks. It's really more of like a force of nature than a antagonist, and I like Kius because I like the adventure that he's in, and I like the idea of my party fighting a like 60-foot mass of worms at the end of a campaign. He's number 10 because I do see him as more of a force of nature than a true villain, and it would be fun to have the villain that's trying to summon Kius or like bring him into the prime material plane, and that villain would get a lot of play. But like, to see all of these worms devouring a castle would be really awesome. Number 9, Manchun. Manchun is cool. I was really tied with like Manchun and Halaster, but I decided I didn't want to put both of them in here for reasons, but I went with Manchun. Manchun's awesome. Manchun created the Zentarum in the Forgotten Realms, which before 4th edition was like an evil group, but then it became a faction in 4th and 5th that you can now join the Zentarum and become part of them, even though their roots are like extremely evil. Manchun was very paranoid. He was a paranoid wizard. He thought people were going to come get him, so he created like dozens, if not hundreds, of sleeping clones all over. And in the event of his death, one of his clones would wake up and he would keep living. However, the magic went awry and a lot of the clones woke up, which brought us to the Manchun Wars, where all of these Manchuns woke up and hated each other because part of the clone spell is if you are cloned and you wake up, you think you're the original and you want to kill all of the other ones that are not the original in your eye. So the Manchuns started attacking each other. And I think that is really what I like about this. I like this havoc of just Manchun everywhere. And if I ran a game using him as the villain, it would be so fun to have my players just kill him constantly. Like, he is just destroyed, and then they turn around and they're like, oh, there's another Manchun over there. Oh, or Manchun's now running for president of Neverwinter. And you're like, how do we stop all of this? And that's the bigger problem. So Manchun is a quality villain. I would have a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun playing him. Number 8, the Lord of Blades. All right, so the Lord of Blades is a Warforged villain from the Eberron campaign setting, and if you're not familiar with Eberron, you're probably not familiar with the Lord of Blades, even though he's really part of the narrative of the Warforged, but like you could run a lot of games without him at all. But the reason I really like him is the Lord of Blades is a Warforged leader that lives inside the Mournlands. So he's kind of isolated and cut off. He's kind of put up like a beacon that like, hey, all of the Warforged of the world, you're always welcome here. Come into the Mournland, blah, blah, blah. And so the rest of the world is looking at this and they're like, is he building an army? The character of the Lord of Blades really reminds me of Magneto in that you can sympathize with Magneto, like what's happening to mutants is bad and we shouldn't be doing all of this, but you can't justify what Magneto's doing to help mutants by crashing Asteroid M into the world and things like that. And this is the same thing. Like the Lord of Blades has good intentions, but he's taking them way too far. And that's a good villain. Like one that you can sympathize with, but you can't side with him. And that's fun. Another cool thing about the Lord of Blades is because nobody really knows much about him, it could be anything you want. And I've thought of things like it could be a title that is passed on to whoever is currently leading the Warforged in their church or their whatever he does. It could be the name of the first Warforged ever created. It could just be an idea. Like somebody sparked this idea of there is this Lord of Blades that is out there like helping us and he doesn't really exist. Like that. A lot of those would be really cool campaigns with a fun twist. Number 7, Tiamat. Now, of course, I'm going to put Tiamat on the list, like very iconic monster, evil dragon god lady. Borderline that like force of nature, but also has a distinct personality that you could role play. But how often are your players really interacting with Tiamat on that scale? But the reason that she's on here and the reason that I love her so much is I played as a character in a very fun game, a Wildmount game where I was a conjuration wizard who was a secret follower of Tiamat. And in Wildmount specifically, Tiamat's kind of the goddess of greed in most campaign settings, but in this one specifically, that was part of her pantheon was greed. And so I was very greedy, and the idea with Tiamat or being a follower of Tiamat is that I was greedy in all of the things I could take, like information or magic or money or all of this, because it could be used as an offering to Tiamat or the Church of Tiamat to then get some kind of favor from the goddess or from the church as a whole. And my dungeon master latched onto that. So while we were playing the ultimate big bad evil guy, we destroyed him. And I had this very powerful magical artifact, and I offered that up to Tiamat in a moment of sacrifice, knowing that I would never get this chance again. And Tiamat accepted it. I became like a half-dragon wizard and ascended up. And pretty much my dungeon master said, like, if we play this again, I think your character is now the new villain for the players to go after. And that's fun. So I just have a lot of fond memories of Tiamat. I think it's really cool. If we ever play that campaign again, I want to play my original character. And I was thinking like maybe when that ascension happened, Joshe Manu, the tiefling conjuration wizard, could wake up as a clone, because his original self is so different that he had a clone that popped up. So we'll see. I don't know. Number 6 is Zagutmoy. Zagutmoy is really all about zombies. I just love the fact that you can have people that worship Zagutmoy, but the more they worship her, the more they're becoming less sentient and less human, and they're becoming more fungus-like, to the point where then they're just mindless automatons that follow her, and that is what she wants. For those of you who don't know, Zagutmoy is the demon queen of fungus, and everything is about mold and funguses, and she has a lot of spores that go out into the world and infect people's brains, altering their judgments and their decisions. So the reason I love Zagutmoy, and I've put her in this spot, is because I want to run a game based on John Carpenter's The Thing, where we don't know exactly who's infected, and we don't know, like, maybe the players don't know, maybe the DM doesn't even know. And we're kind of playing this off that it's like, well, if you're infected, what do you think is going to happen? And what's going to nudge you in the right direction or the wrong direction, and why? And it would be really fun to try and play a game like that where these are your friends. You can't just kill them, but like they might be leading you down a path inadvertently that is very, very bad. Number 5, Acererak. The Lich Acererak, he created the Tomb of Horrors, and I like this villain kind of just for that reason. I think Acererak is really iconic because of the Tomb of Horrors. Well, at least iconic to me. It's this idea that the Tomb of Horrors at this point is so well known. Nobody wants to go into it. There's nothing in there that can really help you, but somehow Acererak keeps getting people that go into the Tomb of Horrors. He somehow, it's like a big test that he's put out there for adventurers. And you have just really cocky people that are going to go out there and say, oh, I can beat the Tomb of Horrors, and then they don't. It's almost like he's not out for world domination, but rather Acererak is putting you in a situation where you know what you have to do. You have to get to the end of the Tomb of Horrors, or you have to get to you have to stop this death curse. You don't want to, but the only way to do it is to literally play the game that Acererak has laid out for you. Go through the maze that he's built for you. And if you do that and survive, then you can stop this, but there's not another way around it. So you have to play by his rules. And I think that makes Acererak a really interesting villain, and a good villain to model after for your own homebrew villains. Is that one that's just like, I'm really here to test the adventurers because I'm intrigued by them. Number 4 is Lolth. On the topic of Acererak kind of manipulating players, I really like Lolth because she seems to manipulate everyone. And that, like, you could be working for Lolth, but you don't really know it. And for those of you who don't know, Lolth is the demon queen of spiders, goddess of the drow, and she's just generally evil and things like that. But, like, the fight against Lolth would not be that much fun it would, like, to actually fight the goddess Lolth would be really cool if we could stat her up and things like that. But it's the idea that no matter who loses, Lolth wins. And I love that idea. So if we have a whole bunch of factions fighting and it's like you have to side with one, and then midway through you realize that no matter what side you choose, like, Lolth is going to get something that she wants or everything that she wants. And that's a hard campaign to craft. And I'm not saying I have the answer or I've plotted this out, but I love this idea because Lolth loves chaos. And so the more she can make all these chaotic things happen, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to throw sticks up in the air, but either way, they're going to fall down and I'm going to win. It's a terrible analogy. I don't know. It's not, don't listen to that. Pulling the strings, like the creature behind the curtain that's kind of manipulating everything. Lolth is just one of those very intelligent, clever villains. And I think if I ran a game with her, I would have to make everybody very afraid of Lolth, to the point where the players don't know if they should believe this or if it's another ruse. But yeah. Number 3, Orcus. I love Orcus. Orcus is also very iconic. And I, much like Lolth, I like to play Orcus as a very smart demon lord. A lot of the times the demon lords, kind of like Zagatmoy, Juiblix, Demogorgon, they're viewed as just like this malevolent evil that comes in and destroys things. But I like Orcus because I feel like he has a purpose. And we have to remember that Orcus was a human who died. He was an evil wizard. He died. His soul went to the abyss, and he rose up the ranks, destroying other creatures or other demons to become Orcus, like to become the demon lord of undeath. And so going through that process, like, I feel like he's got to be really smart. He's got to be a good tactician. He's got to be like, I want to play it really, really smart. Like, he has a purpose for this. And he does have a purpose. That's another great thing about Orcus is, he wants to have everything become dead or undead so that the world, the universe is finally like settled and at peace. And it's this idea of like, I will be the last living thing that closes the door. You know, everything is the dust has settled, so to speak, and it will never rise again because all life is gone. I mean, obviously you have players. They want to stop that. Go players, stop it. We're down to the last two. Number 2, Count Strahd von Zarovich. And you're probably saying to yourself, Self, why isn't that number 1? Well, we'll talk about number 1 later. But Strahd, he has to be on this list because, I mean, it's freaking Strahd. But it's interesting. He's not the strongest compared to, you know, all of these deities and demon lords and things like that. Obviously, Strahd is not the strongest, but he is probably the perfect villain when you really think about it. He has a compelling backstory, and that backstory gives him reason to have his very clear morality. Like, he judges people in this way because of that backstory. And then going even further, that morality really leads to his to direct actions that you can take within the game. He has reasons for all the stuff that he's doing, and throughout the adventures of Ravenloft and stuff like that, he pops up all the time. So another reason that I love him, and probably the reason that he's so iconic, is like, you can be level 1 and Strahd will visit you, but he won't kill you. He's really toying with you. He doesn't necessarily want to kill you. Like, killing you would be really easy, but like everybody in Barovia, he wants to just break them and just give them that utter despair, I think. I have yet to run Strahd, but I just think he's one of the best written villains in Dungeons & Dragons. And number 1 is Vecna, the Whispered One. You probably guessed it. Vecna, the Lich turned deity, turned back to Lich. There's a whole thing. After reading all of Vecna's adventures in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, those are very fun adventures, and Vecna, to me, is like, let's take the power of Orcus, but the mindset of Strahd, and we'll put it into one villain. So you can have Vecna be the really focused kind of, I'm out to kill the players, but I want to break them, or I want to convert them over, or I don't know, like there's like a subjugation there on a soul level that Vecna is interested in rather than just killing you. And it is the people I feel like he's interested in, not necessarily the like land. Like, he's not like, I want to conquer this kingdom to have a kingdom. Like, he wants people and souls, and that kind of translates into becoming the deity where he needs worshipers and stuff. And then on the other side of that, Vecna the deity, like, is undeath and powerful and just this force of nature that you could use within your campaign. And I think that's really cool. Like, you can use him both ways simultaneously. He's a villain that can really flow from level 1 all the way to level 20. He's the only deity to ever break into sigil, which is probably the coolest thing when you really think about it. Like, nobody else has been able to do that. So he's clever. He's smart. I like clever villains. A lot of this also comes back to, you have the hand and eye of Vecna, the two classic magical artifacts that are tied to Vecna himself. And I love these artifacts because, to me, they're very much like the One Ring. They have that corrupted allure where everyone's looking at it and they're like, we know we have to destroy this, but then Boromir's like, it is a gift. Like, the idea that someone within Lord of the Rings could take the ring and say, we're going to use it for good to destroy the Dark Lord. Like, what if your party wanted to use the hand of Vecna to attack Vecna? That's really cool. And the choice that would come up with, like, I'm going to sacrifice potentially my soul to have this hubris of I'm going to be able to control this hand and actually use its power to attack its owner, that would be an amazing campaign, and I would love to see something like that. So rather than seeking out the Sword of Caste and stuff like that, it's like, well, you have this hand of Vecna, you're gonna go fight Vecna. Like, what are you gonna do? Well, boy, those stats are real nice when I chop off my own hand and put on the hand of Vecna. I mean, you probably can control it. You might not. Like, that's a whole can of worms that I would have to get into if it was actually happening at my table. But I love that choice of like, are you going to do the right thing and destroy the hand of Vecna? Or are you going to destroy the One Ring? Or are you going to try and use the ring to destroy the evil? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I just think Vecna is really cool. It's super, super awesome. But what did you think of my video? Are you guys upset? Did I miss someone that you love? We have a lot of Lord Soth players out there who are really sad that I didn't mention him. If you're interested in all these, I have timestamps in the description below to my top 10, as well as videos that correspond to those particular villains. So if you don't know who the Lord of Blade is, but you want more information, you can check it out. I make weekly lore videos on the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons, so if you're interested in that, I would love to have you subscribe. Thanks again, Describe, for sponsoring this video. Go check them out at describe.com/Jordan with a PH in the middle, and add some sweet flavor text to your game. Until then, take care, everybody.